Hello everyone, Storm 101 here. Today we'll be tracking multiple storm systems that will be rolling through parts of the central US later this week into early next week, and that could bring multiple severe weather risks over some of the same areas as well. It does seem likely that we could see another active period of severe weather, and we're going to get in a little bit more detail with some of those items as well. Before we can start this video, if you guys like weather related content, you can subscribe to my channel. We do this stuff here all the time on this channel. Plus, we'll have more updates on these setups here as well over the next couple of days, so definitely stay tuned for more updates whenever I post a video um, as well. We're going to start with the watch warning advisory display. Hey, it is mostly quiet there across most of the country here. Two noticeable things. One of those is that we got some flooding issues in northeastern North Dakota, south or northwestern Minnesota as well. And I think part of that is going to be some of that snow melting up there as well. And that's going to lead to some river flooding downstream as well. And that's kind of the big concern here when you get these big snowfall events up here, uh, which we remember that 4 feet of snow across parts of North Dakota. A lot of that's got to melt, and a lot of that's going to go down some of these rivers here as well, down to the Gulf of Mexico. So that could lead to some flooding issues later down the road. We also got freeze warnings and frost advisories for parts in the Midwest as well. We're going to see another big cool down later this midweek across parts of the central and eastern U.S. Now, the good news is for some places we do expect another warm up, but that does come with the potential for more severe weather as well later this week. I hope nobody planted last weekend. I know temperatures were really nice, mild and dry over the weekend, but I hope you didn't plant because there's another frost and freeze threat coming up for several areas. So we kind of get towards midweek. We're going to check out the store predictor outlook here. If we go back to day one, which is today, there's a marginal risk from the parts of the Ohio Valley down into parts of Dixie Alley into southern Texas. It's not looking to be a big setup or anything. There could be a lower tornado risk for northeastern Ohio, northwest of Pennsylvania, western New York. But damage winds would be the main threat. There could be some hail with some storms in southern Texas, but really, I don't really see this being a big setup or anything. There could be a few strong storms out there as well that could produce some of those hazards as well. Day two, which is tomorrow, we got a marginal risk for the parts of the Carolinas to southeastern Virginia. Kind of a similar situation here. I think a lot of these are going to be popular variety thunderstorms, but with all the instability in place there, you may be able to get some strong updrafts, and when they kind of fall apart, you could get some strong alpha winds as well, and there may be the possibility for a microburst or two out there as well. There's no tornado risk out there given the fact we have very weak wind shear, but wind and hail will be possible. There'll be plenty of instability, but wind shear is just not really going to be there on that setup. So the severe weather risk overall will stay low. And then you get in Wednesday, no severe weather risk is expected. Day four, predictably too low, but when you get into day five, which is Friday, there's a slight risk for severe weather for southern Nebraska, central Kansas, and Oklahoma into northern Texas. And that's our next system that we're watching for the possibility for more severe weather, especially in the central U.S. as well over some of the same areas that got hit decently over the past couple of days. So it's something we definitely keep an eye on. There could be more severe weather risk afterward. And now I should note that now when you have these texts here predictably too low, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a no severe weather or threat. It doesn't necessarily mean that. Um, what it means is it's predictably too low to issue a slight risk. I've seen one of the SPC forecasters mention that on Twitter the other day, and I think it'd be a worth a mention that when you see predictably too low in the 4 to 8 day outlook, it does not mean that there's no severe weather risk. The possibility of severe weather is there, but it's just there's just a lot of uncertainty there that just precludes that hatched area for a 15% or anything like that. But that could change over the next couple of days. It could. So we're going to look into the GFS model here. We're going to kind of skip over the next couple of days here, but I know as we kind of get towards midweek here, we kind of get on this northwest flow here over the Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, down into the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. The Northeast could experience some more snow showers again later this week here. That could be a decent winter storm for over Maine as well, as that low kind of becomes stationary as well. So that could bring us some snow in the parts of northern Maine. And it kind of becomes a cutoff low too. And that's going to kind of slow down this system here at the same time as well, which this is the next system we're watching here for severe weather, which this is Friday here around peak time heating. That's a 989 millibar low in central Kansas. So you got a pretty strong low. The isobars do indicate for possibly for some strong southerly winds out there. There can be a fire risk on the backside of this system as well, especially down in parts of New Mexico and Texas. Again, where you're going to have some of those stronger westerly winds. It's going to be dry. It's going to be mild. Your actual cold front is still back up here. So we could unfortunately see more fire weather risks or wildfires in the parts of New Mexico, Texas, into parts of Oklahoma. Now in the warm sector, it's pretty much about right here and doesn't show a whole lot of development, at least at that point, but that could change as you kind of get into the overnight hours as well as that cap kind of begins to erode away. And then you kind of get into Saturday here. The low kind of becomes a little bit a cutoff low side of things here. Really, it's because this system out here is still in the northeast, and that's kind of backing up everything off to the west as well. It's almost like a traffic jam out there, and that's also going to help keep this system moving a little bit slower. It's also going to slowly weaken over time as well. Now, as we kind of get into Saturday, there could be a severe weather setup for parts of the Midwest. This is an area I'm paying attention to. Parts of Illinois and Indiana, we might be able to see a triple point setup out of this. You got a cold front that kind of settles in right here, and possibly a warm front that could be setting up here. And that kind of leads to the possibility for perhaps a triple point setup out there. So we do need to pay attention to Saturday as well. And then as you kind of get into Sunday here, the low really begins to weaken here, and our cold front does begin to stall out. And another system could begin to build back into the Rockies, and that could bring a return threat for more severe weather setups over some of the same areas as well as you kind of get to early next week. Let's check out the European model. And it's got a pretty good agreement here with the GFS model here with the first system here. So this is getting into Friday night here. A little bit further south here, the low, but it's also a little bit weaker. But even with that, you can still see some severe weather outages here. You can even see here it does show some thunderstorms developing out there as well, which that does mean that the cap may not be there. May well, at least maybe later or earlier today, I should say. But later in the day, as you kind of get in overnight hours, that might begin to break as well. And then as you kind of get into Saturday here, it doesn't really move much here. And then again, like I said here, the system in the northeast, depending on its speed here, it's also going to depend. It's also going to change the speed with some of the systems behind it. Then again, it's like a traffic jam here. If this system here stops here or stalls out, that's going to be this pretty much the same situation with the systems further back to the west. Even this one up here at British Columbia could get slowed down as well. So then again here, peak time heating here, the European model is a little bit slower with the system here, and this is probably a little bit more of an accurate look here, since the GFS does have a tendency to be a little bit progressive here. But regardless here on the speed of the system here, even though the placement of severe weather risk can change, but the overall severe weather setup, not necessarily. You do see here it does show some thunderstorm activity for parts of summer Iowa, across Missouri, maybe and back down to parts of Arkansas, and a little bit farther south than that as well. Now, as you probably get further to the south here, wind shear values do begin to decrease, and some of those may be springtime thunderstorms variety. But as you get closer to the low, those may have better potential for some severe storms, or storms becoming severe. And as you kind of get into Sunday here, the low is still on the stronger side here. And along that cold front there could still be some stronger cells along that cold front as well. Maybe across parts of the Ohio Valley and maybe back down the Dixie Alley. But that's pretty uncertain at this point here. And like you've seen the GFS model, it shows a different story. So really, in reality, there's a lot of uncertainty as you kind of get into Sunday here. But European model also shows another system coming behind that as well. It should kind of get into early next week as well. So let's get a little bit more detail with some of these severe weather setups using the GFS. So we're going to begin with Friday. Instability or surface-based cave. There's plenty of instability out there across central Kansas to central Oklahoma. Now, out ahead of this cold front here, a little bit, or I should say here, a little bit out ahead of the dry line here, there is going to be a cap in place here. This is what some of the sign in kind of represents here, is that potential for a cap there. Really, if you get at least below -50 when it comes to sign in, it may not be favorable for severe weather, especially if you get into -100, 200, or even -300 side of things. But kind of along the dry line, though, it's not really there. And that kind of leads to some concerns out there as well. And that could lead to the possibility for some supercells, as there will be a decent amount of wind shear in place. 850 millibar winds are not impressive out there, but it's still strong enough to support a severe weather risk. Now, if you like the 500 millibar winds, they're not very strong here. However, it does lead to some divergence out there as well, which leads to a lot of lift for some of these storms out there. And here's the surface of composite here. And you can see here there are some elevated numbers out there as well, especially in parts of southern Kansas into central Oklahoma as well, which does lead to the favorable conditions for some severe weather, and also means that all hazards will be possible as well. Hail, damaged winds, even tornadoes will be possible in that type of environment as well. And the severe weather risk could continue in the overnight hours depending on how much instability we'll have left. And then it kind of moves into Saturday, which this is instability values. You can see here when it comes to instability. So you get into Saturday here around peak time heating. There's plenty of instability out there. In the blue colors, that's at least 1,000 joules per kilogram. But when you get those green colors, that's at least 2,000. So generally, you got about 1 to 2,000 joules per kilogram of surface-based CAPE, which is favorable for severe weather. Now, as you kind of look into 850 millibar winds, especially across parts of Missouri, Illinois, even back down to parts of northeastern Arkansas, there's a decent level of jet in place here. And this kind of becomes a cutoff low a little bit as well here. You kind of get this big, like little donut hole here when it comes to 850 millibar winds, which kind of leads to indication that this low here will kind of become a little bit more of a cutoff low. And you can see that a little bit better here when you go to 500 millibar winds. And then again, a lot of lift out there for some of these storms here, which could lead to the possibility for some widespread convection. So that's another thing to watch for as well. It also kind of depends on how much dry air will be around as well, which this is the dew points at 850 millibars. You can see there's a lot of moisture in place out there as well, which could lead to the possibility for some widespread convection out there as well. So that's something to watch for. And if we check out the supercell composite here, there are also some elevated numbers out there. So severe weather will be possible in some of these areas in here, especially for parts of Illinois, even back into parts of Missouri. That's the area I'm watching for right now anyway. Could change over the next couple of days, but these areas in here, that's the area I'm watching for. Should kind of get into Saturday. Then once you get into Sunday, now there are some elevated numbers over parts of the Ohio Valley, but then again, that's still some absurdity here. The GFS and European model both have different stories as you get into Sunday here, and which the GFS seems to show a pretty decent environment for severe weather up there. Instability values generally 1 to 2,000 joules per kilogram, and some of the stuff here will change. Keep in mind of that. But the low of a jet is there, and 500 millibar winds. There's not as much divergence out there, but there could certainly be some wind shear to work with out there as well, which could lead to the possibility for some strong severe storms out there as well. But then again, that could change as well. Let's go move back to surface-based cable. You do notice here, instability does begin to build back into parts of the southern plains, and that leads to the next system here, which here's Monday. Plenty of instability across central Texas here, and then you kind of get into Tuesday here, similar situation here, but it does move a little bit north here, and even with more instability out there. And then you get into Wednesday here, it kind of moves up into parts of the lower Ohio Valley, maybe into parts of the Mississippi River Valley as well. And there's some uncertainty as you kind of get to Thursday of next week. So, and let's go ahead and check out the GFS ensembles here. We're just going to look at the superset composite here um, from each individual member here. Instead of looking to the mean here, let's look at by each individual model here. So here's all your 20 members here, and you can see here beginning on Friday, there's a pretty good agreement out there. You notice that pretty much every single model out there has elevated superset composite probabilities. Now, the placement is a little bit different. Some of them are a little bit faster, some of them are a little bit slower, but regardless of the speed, if they all show a favorable environment for supercells, which could lead to all hazards, hail, damaged winds, and tornadoes. Those are all possible. And then you get into Saturday. The numbers do back off, but there's still some decent numbers out there. The placement's a little bit different, but then again, regardless of the speed of the system, the conditions could still be favorable for some strong to severe storms. Now, the placement here will probably change here. The speed of the system will can't depend on the placement, or the placement will depend on the timing of the system. There we go. That's the right way to put it. And then again, like I said here, for the possibility for a triple point setup here, if you kind of look on the northern end of some of these members here in the Midwest region, you notice there are some of these here to have triple point setups out there, and that's what I'm paying attention to, because as we do get into Saturday, there's we could see a triple point setup out there. You can see here the ones I'm highlighting here all show the possibility for a triple point setup. And there's a lot of them. At least the majority of them anyway. So a triple point setup out there as well. Let's move this out of the way here. And then you get into Sunday here. And you know how the GFS showed some pretty elevated numbers. Well, the GFS is almost not so much. So there's not a good agreement as you do get into Sunday. But you do notice back into parts of the Southern Plains, those superset composite numbers do begin to rise. There's Monday, and this is a pretty impressive agreement here for several days out from the GFS ensembles here. Pretty much the majority of them have elevated numbers, at least of 4, at least somewhere in the Central U.S. anyway. The timing and the placement is going to change, but all of them have some similar superset composite probability numbers, and that's a little bit concerning here, especially given by this very strong agreement. And this does lead to the possibility for more severe weather as well. And here you go, getting into Tuesday here. And Tuesday kind of looks a little bit worse here on some of the model members out there. But then again, some things can still change out here. At this point here, we're at a little over a week out. But there's a pretty good agreement here. If I were to count here how many members show some pretty good superset composite parameters, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 out of 20 members show some pretty elevated superset composite probability numbers. So there's a pretty decent agreement here from GFS ensembles, and that's something to really watch for. And really what all this means here is that we are likely going to see another active period of severe weather. You're going to get these multiple systems that come out of the Rockies, and that could bring in multiple severe weather setups over some of the same areas. So if you do live in the parts of the Central Plains, the Southern Plains, the Midwest, parts of the Mississippi River Valley, even the parts of the Tennessee Valley, New Ohio Valley, definitely need to keep an eye on this over the next several days here, because we could see another active period for severe weather, especially as we get into early May. But anyways, guys, that's all for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Guys, like this video, hit the like button if you like my channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you've got some questions about this, put a comment section down below. I'll answer you guys' questions. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and have a good day.